Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Joe with my co-host, Dr. Ami Bhatt, with MedTech Insights. MedTech Insights is a weekly interactive talk show led by me and Ami, where we interview two guest leaders in digital health every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, like we are doing today. We are a lean production with just me and Ami, and our desire is to connect and learn from you and from other great innovators. Healthcare is fast changing. We love hearing from those directly on the ground, creating change, learn from clinicians practicing on the front lines, and from VCs and investors about what they think is disrupting in healthcare. Please join our mailing list and look for us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Over to Ami.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you today. I don't know if you're feeling a little slow. I think my kids were 5 minutes late for school. We were 5 minutes late to broadcast. It's just one of those days. But spring is around the corner and or is here, I guess, although it got a little cold in Boston this morning. So now I feel like the around the corner phrase again. And today is so exciting. Thank you to all of you who have already reached out with your excitement for today. We have two incredible female entrepreneurs here with us today, and it's just going to be a great discussion thinking about their careers, their lives, how they got to what they're doing, and how they're really changing the way that we look at healthcare and medicine and really empowering our patients. So I think this is going to be great. Again, just a quick disclaimer, all of the opinions that you will hear from Dr. Joe and myself are our own and don't represent any of the institutions for whom we work or affiliate. And I'm going to go ahead and get started and bring our first guest on. So Dr. Beth Frates is a physician and wellness coach specializing in lifestyle medicine. She's an award-winning teacher at Harvard Medical School and passionate about empowering people to lead healthy lives. She has a book, The Lifestyle Medicine Handbook, and that has been ranked in the top 100 best books of medicine for all time. So we're incredibly honored to have Dr. Frates with us today. And why don't we go ahead and bring her on? Dr. Frates, thank you for being with us today. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So people are kind of dying to hear your story. So as we start, we will definitely talk about digital health and how it's, changing people's ability to really engage. Will you first tell us a little bit about how you came in a very traditional generation of, the years that you went to college and med school, very traditional generation, to be one of the first people to pioneer and say, we can do this differently. We can probably do this better. Will you just tell us a little bit about your kind of life course getting here?
Sure. Thank you. So actually, I thought I was going to run a company. My dad had started a company and I was to take it over. Actually, his dad started it and I was going to be the third generation to take it over. So it's a thrill to be on an entrepreneurial podcast like this. I'm really getting back to my roots. As it turns out, my dad had a heart attack and stroke when I was 18 and he was 52. So all things changed. His lifestyle completely changed. His own work changed. And then my career trajectory actually changed at that time. I became fascinated by medicine, how he made a complete recovery from a stroke, which left him paralyzed on the left side. I was fascinated with how the brain worked, fascinated by why he got the heart attack in the first place and how he could prevent one from happening again, which led me to think about how do we prevent heart attacks and strokes in general. Yes.
So just thinking, it's actually the line that is drawn, Jen, right between 1 week to another. So in a very different direction. One of our guests last week was also motivated by a family member who had had a stroke and ended up in a wheelchair and ended up doing some great tech work on helping people rehabilitate. It's amazing how these experiences in our lives with our family really change us. So for you, Beth, we think about kind of lifestyle medicine. So a few things. One is, will you tell our audience, because we have people who are investors, we have MedTech, we have, students, physicians, nurses, a little bit about what lifestyle medicine really means to you. And then can you tell us a little bit about this past year with COVID? Because all of a sudden things became very virtual. And can you still do Lifestyle Med virtually? Were you already kind of doing it? So what is Lifestyle Med, and then how does it happen virtually?
Great. So lifestyle medicine came into fruition really in 2004 when the American College of Lifestyle Medicine was birthed, and it has made tremendous progress in the past, I would say, 15 years. It has really gained a lot of momentum. We now have 5,000 members. What is it? Lifestyle medicine is all about using exercise, nutrition, stress resiliency, sleep, social connection, and substance use moderation or elimination, depending on what the individual needs, to reach optimal health and wellness at any age or stage of your life. So yes, we believe in medications, and many lifestyle medicine practitioners are MDs, DOs, and they prescribe medications. However, there's a strong and firm hold and usage of exercise prescriptions, nutrition prescriptions, sleep prescriptions, and social connection prescriptions so that people can prevent, treat, and in many cases reverse chronic diseases. That's the specialty. And I would say pre-COVID, a lot of this, most of this was done in person, especially for me. I did not hold many visits. I had held a few by Skype prior to COVID, but my work was in person, one-on-one and in groups. I was a leader and there were 12 participants, for example. I was not very interested in doing visits that were by Skype. I did them for friends, and I was shocked that they worked, and they worked well. This was pre-COVID. I did experiment. Now, of course, with COVID, we've all experimented and been delighted to see that we can really practice lifestyle medicine and help people adopt healthy habits virtually. I was very surprised, especially with group visits. I tried them a year ago, March 2020, with Spalding Rehab Hospital and a grant from SameU Foundation. They wanted to help people during the pandemic that had had stroke and traumatic brain injury to connect and to be able to be seen and heard and learn ways to make their recovery optimal and prevent any further sequelae or further episodes. So I would say it was shocking how the social connection piece virtually could be so powerful. That was the one thing that really surprised me. And it's an important part of change, social support.
You know, it's funny that you say this, right? Because you said in the beginning, I was going to be an entrepreneur like my dad. And I would argue you have become an entrepreneur, right? Because this is an area where many of us shy away, both as care providers, but even as patients. I don't know about you, Jen, but I don't know where to find that individual patient empowerment sometimes to feel like being healthy in all of the areas that you said this. And I said, gee, if only I could be healthy in all those arenas all the time. And I'm a cardiologist. So like, if it's hard for me, you can imagine it is hard for others. But that last part you said, right, that is true entrepreneurship, is you did it. You built this, really this field, for those who don't know. Kind of immunizing. When you say it started in 2004 and it grew because you were there with others, but you were there. And now watching you during COVID and really admitting that you didn't think this would necessarily be a way to do it. But wow, doesn't social connection really improve the likelihood of people, sticking with these plans and doing these things? So I love that we kind of see that connection. So one of the questions that has already come in is a question about the use of kind of potentially using digital health in the future. The lifestyle medicine field hasn't yet used it, but is it possible that the field will now really move more towards wearables and engaging people with tech in the future? Or do you think that that's maybe not where we're headed? I think people want to know.
Yes, I think we definitely can use tech in lifestyle medicine. I mean, many of us are using devices to help people stay accountable for their physical activity and nutrition. I find that patients, especially in the beginning when they're making changes, they enjoy sending photos of their food. They enjoy putting what they've eaten in a log. Now, this isn't long term. They don't want to do this for their entire life, but it does help, especially in the beginning. And if they get off track, to get back on track. So we really are using some digital health and devices. In fact, the pedometer was one of the things, even back in 2008 or 9, that we were using to help people stay accountable for their steps. And there was a recent article actually published that showed those patients that were using a device actually took 1,850 more steps per day than those that were not using a device. So I think we will embrace the use of digital health. And now knowing that our visits can be as powerful digitally as they were one-on-one. Now, I have to admit, I'm part Greek. Okay, my grandparents came from Greece. So I am all about embracing and being with a person. I like being next to and in front of the patients. But because of COVID, I am convinced that I can practice virtually. And what I'll tell you about virtual practice and group settings, we can cross continents. I had people from Africa in my group. I never would have had people from Africa in my group. It's incredible how we may be able to connect individuals and different situations, find commonality, support each other across continents, oceans. It's really very encouraging and exciting for me personally. And so I'm viewing this as an opportunity. And what good will we take out of COVID? For me, it's the realization that I can do my work virtually and I can help people from different continents. That's big.
That's
for
amazing.
Me.
That's amazing. And Tina Ye is agreeing via LinkedIn. She says, during these times, I find many people are looking for community as well as health and wellness. And I love that you actually listed social connection as a actual health goal and a health benefit. And I think that's so important. So maybe what we can do is let us bring on, I know there are more questions coming, but let us bring on our second guest as well. And then we'll ask some of these questions because they're entrepreneurship oriented to both of you. So we have Rose Higgins joining us as well. And she is the CEO of HealthMyne. This is continuing our thoughts about artificial intelligence and being able to really use the data that we have. Specifically, HealthMyne works in radiomics, which she's going to teach us all about today, and think about how it is that we can, use technology to really help further our patients' care. So with that, Rose Higgins.
Yeah, I'm just going to highlight also that Ami just said radiomics.
Yes.
I've never heard of that word before.
Right before we met Rose, but Rose is coming for radiomics. That's exactly right.
Okay, welcoming Rose.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Rose. So excited to have you with us. This is fantastic. So it's been about a year since you've taken the helm of HealthMyne. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I started in January of last year. It was quite a year.
Out of all the times you could have taken a job, you did not realize that this was going to be that year. And I have to say the same is probably true for Beth, right? Being the president-elect of Lifestyle Med and now saying, wow, where are we headed with virtual care? This is so exciting for us to have you both at this time. So Rose, maybe will you start for us because we have a large audience of female trainees and VCs out there who have been excited for today. And also tell us a little bit about your course and your journey and how you ended up with HealthMyne, and then we'll dive into radiomics.
Sure. So I'm a nurse and an informaticist by background. I started my clinical work at UPMC in transplant care, and I got very interested in the power of data. I'll date myself a little bit in that at the time we were using literally white paper taped to the back of a patient door, writing in pencil all the daily metrics that we needed to track and manage. And it was obvious that there were better ways to do this work. And so I got very interested quickly in how do you begin to gather that data, but most importantly, find the really relevant facts in the data. And that led me down a path of really looking at analytics. And so most of my career, once I left clinical life, was really working in service of bringing that data to clinicians and to those interested in getting those insights to change the course of treatment, to inform, frankly, payment decisions, because at the end of the day, healthcare has got a financing mechanism. So I've always been able to kind of tread the boards between what's important for providers and payers. And it always coalesces around this notion of analytics. And so it led me on a path of working in a series of senior roles in different organizations advancing analytic use cases. And when I was approached by the board around joining HealthMyne, what I loved about it was getting back to the clinical, really feeling like all the work that I had been doing was bringing me back home to where I really had my first love, which is if you're going to do something in life, can you change life as a point of the work that you do? And so it really brought it kind of full circle for me. And it was a great opportunity to join a really interesting company at the right time in terms of its maturity and the science and really what we could do together to commercialize it and bring it out.
Oh, that's fantastic. You know, we were just having a conversation this morning about polarity and things that are very polarized. And in fact, the example that somebody used just this morning was talking about payers and kind of the cost of the system and then delivering kind of very patient-centric healthcare. And we were talking about the connectors. And I have to say in that discussion, the idea of analytics did not come up during that discussion. It was a bunch of clinicians talking. But I really think, oh, that's great. That's speaking of across the border. That's one of my colleagues from India. I love that. So really,
what
like,
time is it in India?
Huh?
Okay.
Anyway,
Isn't it like late?
9.5 hours ahead of us.
yeah, it's right pre-bedtime. Yeah. I think they have children, so their kids are probably just going down
They
now,
stayed up
out in India.
Like 9 p.m. to watch
That's
you.
right. That's true. Well, you know, we have people everywhere. So Rose, thinking about that connection with analytics between the two, I think you do have a video to kind of show, but radiomics is one of those very first places where this idea really came forward very strongly. And so maybe, I don't know if you want to show the video first so we get everybody on board as to what radiomics is, or explain a little and then show the video, and then we can chat more.
Sure. So let me set the stage, and then fingers crossed, I'll be able to show the video and we won't have any difficulty. But so radiomics is really an emerging science, and it's been around almost a decade now. And what it is really taking medical imaging and extracting a new kind of data by dimensionalizing the image information and then bringing that out in ways that you can then discern from it different insights that you simply can't with the naked eye. So it doesn't matter how qualified or experienced you are as a radiologist, this isn't information that's available to you unless you go in and extract it. But once you do, you can find different kinds of patterns in the data that can yield imaging biomarkers. So I think we've gotten very comfortable with the notion of genomic markers. This is a similar concept, but using imaging data that talks about the tumor biology. And so it gives us another complementary data that we can bring together and serve multiple purposes across key stakeholders in healthcare. So let me give this a go.
Great.
And see if we can get this file up.
And that's great. Perfect.
It shows cancer. It's more than just a diagnosis. It's devastating. But what if that image could offer a deeper look into the disease? One that would help determine a personalized plan for cancer care. That's where radiomics enters the picture. Radiomics is a revolutionary approach that extracts a wealth of invaluable high-dimensional data from standard medical imaging. At HealthMyne, this is our focus, uncovering critical imaging data that lies below the surface and translating it into groundbreaking radiomic insights for use in cancer research, treatment planning, and clinical management. AI enables the use of tumor biology to define a novel set of quantifiable patterns known as imaging biomarkers. These markers, which provide clinical signatures as unique as each patient, act as a catalyst to evaluate disease progression, monitor therapy response, and predict clinical outcomes. Equipped with this powerful information, we can change cancer care. Radiomics provides a breakthrough, non-invasive, and cost-effective approach for better, more accurate diagnosis, game-changing treatments, and truly personalized therapies specific to each patient. And with each new data point, we're building a knowledge base to accelerate the development and delivery of the best possible treatments, assess the efficacy of clinical trials, and ultimately, improve patient outcomes population-wide from today forward. HealthMyne, revolutionizing imaging data to ensure the right treatment every time. To find out more, visit HealthMyne.com today.
So this is great, Rose. Oh, Jen, you're muted, so I get to talk first. This is what happens. So one quick question, Rose. You said it perfectly, right? This is imaging biomarkers in a way, right? And you related that to the idea of genomics. And people are ready and okay to kind of dive into genomics and say, yeah, this makes sense. I want my personalized genetic, prescription for what my statin dose should be. People are coming all the time asking for things like that. But I will say there is a slight lack of trust when it comes to a computer analyzing something and then telling you what you should do. And somehow the field of radiomics, specifically in cancer, overcame that problem. So will you first tell us a little bit more that you were just about to jump into about kind of radiomics and how you're using it? And then maybe just add in a little bit about that trust.
Well, I think it's a really important point because first there's the developing of the science. You've got to have the evidence base that says there is value in this data, and it's been proven in a variety of different study forums and across multiple different kinds of therapeutics. So we focus in oncology, but radiomics is applicable wherever an image is rendered. So think of every time a CT, an MR, or PET scan is done, we, for example, extract 1,600 features for every lesion identified. And so if you think about that in terms of the vastness of the data that's going unused today, that's really a travesty in our opinion. So you want to go in there. We take technique that has to be applied. So we do dimensionality reduction to find those sort of the beginning of the needles in the haystack, and then continue to transform those through the research to say, these are the ones that actually are applicable for this particular type of cancer at this stage of cancer or other kinds of conditions where it's relevant. And so it comes down to doing the work of the science. And so we began our journey working with researchers who are interested in this particular area. Dr. Bob Gillies out of Moffitt is one of the champions of the science. And they're also, frankly, one of the most prolific publishers on the subject. But it's global. So to borrow what Beth was saying, this is not something that's happening in a vacuum. It's happening globally. And in fact, I would say in some ways, Europe and Asia are ahead of us in radiomics because they saw the sort of power and the fruitfulness of it early and have kind of gotten into the deep end. And we're kind of catching up a little bit here in the States. But with all that said, you have to do the work of the science, but then you have to also educate on the AI. So we describe very explicitly, and I apologize, it seems like we had some trouble with the video, but what we're actually doing is we're using deep learning technique in rendering the images so that we can take what's a 2D image and make it a 3D image. So we move from, pixels to voxels, and then we start to do calculations on what the relationships between that. And that's what then gives us these features, which in turn then turns into these biomarkers. And then you use machine learning technique on the back end to manage through large data sets to find the patterns. So I think most folks are comfortable with the notion of, you use the term machine learning, people go, oh, I get it, it's a technique. Well, that's really what we're talking about here in AI, is applying a set of techniques that are proven across multiple industries and certainly well vetted in healthcare to apply to this particular challenge of how do I go through this new data and then bring it together. I might also point out that we don't believe you can use these in a vacuum. They should be married together. So you bring your genomic data, you bring your radiomic data, you bring the other omics available to really give you the full picture and the true personalization of what's going on with that particular individual.
That's fantastic. So, when we think about bringing the radiomics forward, and I think you have actually an example of what the software actually looks like, which we'd love to see. I'm just going to plant a seed because I see my cardiology colleagues up here on Twitter watching. Have you forayed out of cancer? Do you plan to? Beth is thinking about lifestyle medicine and applying this to, what she sees with her patients, collecting data. I am thinking about the vulnerable plaque in a coronary artery in a CAT scan and how we just wish we could predict better. Is there a plan for HealthMyne and for this field to kind of veer into other areas now? Are we ready?
Oh, absolutely. I think we are. We know today, for example, we focus in oncology, but our customers are using it in other areas already. There's essentially every organ system is being evaluated and used in different ways. So we focus in cancer, but you can use the tool essentially in any body area, any therapeutic area. The key is, though, that you want to go back and look at the evidence that has been developed in that particular area to make sure that what you're discerning in the radiomic analysis has either a body of knowledge that you can compare it to, or then do the research that's necessary to really understand it and the specifics of the use case you're interested in. But there is no area, I would say, that AI will not touch and is not perhaps already touching in many ways. So we work an awful lot in the lung and the brain, and we are also expanding into a variety of other areas. But I will say that our customers are pushing us out of oncology pretty quickly. We've got a couple of folks that are very interested in neuroscience applications. MS, for example, is very interesting. Alzheimer's is a very interesting area. Stroke, to borrow again on what Beth has said. In fact, just recently, you've seen the FDA starting to approve independent algorithms for diagnosis of stroke. And so there's different ways in which this technology can be brought to bear. And it's one of the issues, to be honest, is this something that you want to be fully automated by a computer, or is this something where you want to have human expertise applied? We come from the human in the loop philosophy, where it's the marriage of the clinical expert with the use of the tool to make and render the decisions, because that clinical intuition, honestly, that's really the best possible arbiter for the patient's success. But providing new data on which to base those judgments is really the job of what we're trying to do.
That's wonderful. And it's so true, right? With physician and nurse burnout right now, and with the amount of administrative burden, to free up clinicians to really be clinicians, to really do the thinking and be Greek or be Indian and do the connecting and the, hugging virtually or in person. And even thinking about the stroke work, which I had seen as well, it marries nicely with virtual care, in fact, because we do a lot of acute stroke advising in terms of how to manage. And so if community hospitals have better algorithms, better AI to help them determine, is this a stroke? What is happening? And then they have access to, specialists who may not live in that rural area to say, here's how you treat what you're seeing. I think we can really revolutionize care in some areas of the country that aren't getting it right now. So we would love to actually see the kind of dig into what the software looks like, if that sounds okay. So I think, Jen, are you able to share that one for us? All right.
Yes,
so Jen is
we are going
this.
to attempt me sharing this with you.
Yes. No, take your time. And I'm going to prime both Rose and Beth for the next question, which is there are a few different people who've written in phrases that all come back to glass ceiling, or how do you make it that last step? I'm rising, but that last step seems hard. So if you'll both think about that for a second, we're going to come back to that after we dig into the software. And I don't think this has Rose, you're going to do a little voiceover for us and tell us what's happening here, right? Okay.
Yes. So you're going to see an image again. So this is us using a CT scan, and we use our core and our AI to do a rendering of what's going on. What you're seeing now is the calculation of the radiomics and the presentation of those changes. This scrolls through 1,600 of the different kinds of metrics that we have, which include the standards like the IBSI, the KIBA, and so forth. And then we render insights like total tumor burden reports. So that kind of zipped by. But the software works about that quickly. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is, how long does it take? And it really, we're talking, sub-minute for this whole process to run and render. We pre-process all of the images. The radiologist makes a mark, or the imaging scientist. All of this is happening in the background. And this is the immediate delivery of the radiomic. Sometimes you'll see people generating histograms and things that you then have to go to do the work on. We do all of that in the software. So we just render the 1,600, we provide them as outputs, in reports, views, workflows, or you can take the whole data set and do what you need to, either, plug it into MATLAB to do other things with it, or whatever the particular benches that you happen to be working on from a research perspective.
So one question that came up, actually the previous few times that we talked about AI, was who's the best consumer for you? For a company like HealthMyne, are we looking like Beth is directly at the patients? And actually, Beth, this question is relevant to you as well. Or should we be looking at payers and systems? And should we be going to them and then thinking about this? Which way works better? Do you, Rose, go directly to a cancer center? Do you go to payers and then do it? And Beth, then for you as well, your personal work, of course, is directly with patients, but as kind of the president-elect of Lifestyle Med, when we think about Lifestyle Med changes, do you go to the payers first instead, or do you go to Medicare, or do you go straight to a patient? So maybe Rose, you first, and then.
Well, we work primarily with life science and researchers today. We do have hospitals and health systems that choose to use the software in their own processes for managing their cancer programs, and that includes everything from screening. We do cancer screening, incidental findings management, up through diagnosis and therapy response management. So all of that is enabled. So we have customers who are using that. But we found that life science customers have huge sets of data and a need to get to information pretty quickly, particularly around biomarkers and the ability to make that a companion to their particular product. So it's very useful there. Researchers who are kind of tackling the bigger, broader issues of what do you do with this data? How do I apply it? And getting down to very specific things that can be rendered for use within the clinical setting. And then ultimately, we do believe this belongs in the hands of the clinicians. I will say that what we find payers interested in is the evidence base. Payers want the evidence base on which to make decisions about payment policy and medical policy and so forth. And so just as, gene testing went through the same process, you're going to see, I think, imaging going through a testing process where people are trying to understand, is this the right image at the right time? Do we need to do a biopsy? Because if you think about what you're doing with imaging and biomarkers, you're actually doing non-invasive biopsying work. And so where you do a particular tissue biopsy, you get one tiny aspect of that area that you're sampling. When you do it with a radiomic view, you get all of the lesion and you get all of the characteristics. So there's a great deal of that that's of interest to payers, and we think that's a longer term opportunity for us.
Great. And Beth, from your perspective, in terms of really moving the field forward and thinking about both in-person and virtual kind of lifestyle medicine adoption, we do so much secondary care. We're always reacting to what happened, right? How do we get lifestyle med and prevention out there?
Yes, so similarly, we need to get to the payers, and we need to really get reimbursement for the work that physicians do in lifestyle medicine and counseling. That's one. Two is we also need to educate physicians who did not learn about the power of exercise and nutrition during their medical school years or their training. So we do need to hit clinicians and patients. That's our number one target audience in lifestyle medicine. We'd like everyone to feel empowered, to have the information about exercise, nutrition, sleep, stress resiliency, and to use it. So for us in the field of lifestyle medicine, it's really getting patient, provider, and then payer all involved and all passionate about the power of lifestyle medicine to prevent, treat, and in some cases reverse chronic conditions.
Fantastic.
Such important information, and really appreciate having such amazing, wonderful, powerful women on the show, which is one of the themes that Ami and I clearly like to highlight, which is making the invisible visible. So oftentimes women in leadership are not as visible as men in leadership. And we have clear data that girls, young women, they really just need to see a woman in leadership and what that looks like. And we get a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions, especially from my mentees, around, what is it like? But most importantly, what are the important skills? What are the most important skills for women in leadership? And maybe we can start with Rose. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a wonderful question because it's been my journey is to make sure that I come first as a woman who happens to be whatever else I happen to be, right? I am able always to think about within the context of who I am as a human being. And as a woman, I bring, I think, a different set of skills sometimes to the conversation than men do. So I think that listening is a really important skill. And throughout my career, it's been one of the first lessons. Learn to listen. Make sure you're taking on board the information that's being provided. Take the cues from what's going on in the room, not just the words, but pay attention. I think emotional IQ in women leadership is very well represented, and it's one of our, frankly, it's one of our gifts. And I think it's an area where we're able to take that ability to be empathetic, but also to support people in their own journey. You've got to be tough when you need to be tough. I think that's the other side of it too. You're allowed to have opinions. You should have opinions, and you should feel very comfortable expressing those opinions. So I would say as a woman leader, learn how to read the room, listen with all of your parts, and make sure that when you bring it together, you're reflecting back something that is useful to the audience, that they can grow and evolve. And that's really been part of my journey, is I've had women that I've been able to work with to mentor me, but also very many men who've said to me that these are the things we value in what you bring to the table, and have allowed me the opportunity to leverage those as best I can.
Oh, wow. Such really good, important points. And I do love that you've underscored that EQ being a motive and how important that is, I think, for men to also bring more emotions and to work, which I think has not traditionally been as prioritized, is a good way to say it. Beth, are any recommendations or words to what you would tell a mentee of the most important skills to your success while you have had this journey?
Yes, I would echo all of what Rose said. That was brilliant. I would focus in on the power of communication. So working on your verbal communication, your written communication, being aware of all that you communicate with your body language, with your tone of voice. Again, it's EQ. Knowing about how you can effectively communicate your ideas and assertively communicate your ideas. I think that's really important. I believe that knowing your own strengths as a woman, really appreciating your gifts that you have, your uniqueness, and leveraging that, and not being afraid of it. There's this fear of failure, and I believe the growth mindset and Carol Dweck's work can help us push through that, which is, if we do have a mishap, make a mistake, we learn and grow from it. So every attempt is an opportunity to learn and grow. There's also something that's fascinating, which is the fear of success. And this was brought to my attention later in my career when someone said, "What are you afraid of? Why don't you get bigger? Why don't you go bigger? You could go big. Why don't you? Are you afraid of success? And what does that really mean?" And I think when we have mentors and when we have support systems and we have role models that show us that being successful and being authentic, being purpose and passion driven can be a really rewarding way to live, I think is powerful.
That's fabulous. I love that concept, right? And that addresses to an extent that the few comments about glass ceiling, which is I've gotten this far, and I'm noticing that those comments are coming from a lot of MDs in the audience, where it is possible, right? You rise, and then you just stop right here. And there's this entire level of, still to this day, largely male chiefs and largely male presidents of hospitals, although we are clearly, breaking through with some beautiful mentors out there. But I think both of you really hit the nail on the head with the concept of knowing your strengths, recognizing there are strengths that cross leadership no matter what gender, right? And I think working on those, but the listening, the communication, all the different ways we can listen and communicate, and then not being afraid of those big steps. And both of you have taken really large steps out of anybody's comfortable wheelhouse, right? I watch your careers and the way you just said, well, you know what? Here we go. I am here. And I think it's great for our audience to be able to meet and see both of you. For the audience members who have not met or chatted with Beth Frates or Rose Higgins before, I will tell you, even engaging with them on social media has been great. They are both very responsive. And this has been such a delight today. We should probably let you guys go. Thank you for staying over. We had so much to talk about, but maybe Beth first and then Rose, and of course, my partner in crime, Jen. Any last words of advice for people, Beth, especially about people who are going to take a different path than what everybody else is doing?
I would say be true to you. Follow your instincts, follow your gut. And if you have an idea that's out of the box, all the better. Look at that idea as gold and figure out what you need to put in place to make it a reality. And most importantly, look for support systems. Reach out to other people, other women that are in your network or outside your network that are doing what you're doing or have been successful in a different area. I would reach out.
Great. Rose, from your perspective, both for the entrepreneurship, but also for those who are thinking about AI and have small or large companies, thoughts from you?
Well, I would say do what you love on the professional side. Make sure that you don't take no for an answer if it's not the right answer. Be sure that you kind of dig in and say, this is what I believe, and get your proof case in order and go get it done. I would say that the things I've enjoyed most in my career have come by taking the chances. So don't be afraid to take the chances. As it comes to AI, it's happening right now, folks. So get on the train, be part of the discussion, make sure you're advancing your concerns as well as those things that you're finding are working really well, but become part of the discussion. That's the key way to get it done. And honestly, it's here to stay. So we can be part of the evolution. And I would suggest that we all do, because it's a fascinating road and all of us have a role to play in it.
Thank you so much to Beth Frates and Rose Higgins. I really enjoyed this episode. Beth, I've been following you for forever. I really respect the work that you do at Lifestyle Medicine. Yeah, I know. This is the first time you've acknowledged that I exist, but that's fine. You can have a groupie. I like being a groupie and not knowing, that's part of the fun, right? You have no idea I exist.
I'm so sorry. It's hard to keep up with the
all your groupies.
Just Twitter in general. It's hard.
Rose, really fantastic to meet you. This is the first time. I think I'm just going to underscore this here. Women make up the majority of the care in terms of the care provided in the healthcare system, the care provided in the homes. We often are not as comfortable with moving into a classically startup tech role, and the role of CEO is scary. So if you're frustrated with how the system works, you have role models here. Rose is an example. And I'm really excited to have met you and learn more about what you're doing, and appreciate you joining our show. So very excited to have had this. And Ami, I'll leave the last words to you. Oh, but also don't forget, MedTech Insights every Tuesday, 12 noon. I'm working on the newsletter and the social tweets to make it more clear how to join us. But remember, every Tuesday at 12 noon, new and exciting guest. Over to you, Ami.
I cannot say much more. This is fantastic. And to all of you clinicians out there, please remember, Beth started as an MD, Rose started as an RN. They had, classic clinical training, and they took that. And that is a part of who they are, and have probably made them as strong as they are as voices, as leaders. So please remember that, straight and narrow is wonderful for those of you who do that like me, but at some point we start
sitting from their academic office. Okay.
But no, find that passion and love that passion and do it. And thank you to our audience for joining us, for all the questions today. And we can't wait to see you again next Tuesday and thereafter. So next Tuesday at noon. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.